Hi, welcome, Joey. I'm so glad you're here for our first Grammar Bootcamp workshop. And for those of you that are watching this as a recording, welcome as well. This is the first in a series of quite a few Grammar Bootcamp workshops that we're going to be providing to help students be more comfortable with sentence structure, with the parts of speech, and with how they put words together in their sentences, what a lot of people call grammar. All right, so we're going to start today with looking at the difference between verbs and verbals. Verbal is a word that a lot of people may not have heard of before. What is a verbal? A lot of the dictionaries don't even recognize it as a word, but it is a very important part of speech, and it's easily confused with verbs. And so it's important that we know what the big difference is. And what is that big difference? Oh, guess what? It's tense. I'm sure you've heard of verb tense. Verbs have tense and verbals do not. And we're going to explore that a little more deeply in this workshop. But first of all, let's talk about what misconceptions students have about verbs and where they come from. Joey, I'm just going to ask you this question. Has anyone ever taught you that verbs are action words?
Yes, that's what I think they are, action.
Action. And that's what a lot of us are brought up and taught to think of verbs as action words. And that can be really problematic. And the reason that can be problematic is because verbs are action words only in the most simple sentences. So we have situations where verbs are action words, but we have other situations where verbs are not action words. And then we have a third situation where action words are not verbs. And that sounds confusing. So let's look at some sentences and see some very concrete examples of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you in this first sentence, John runs every morning for an hour. I'm not going to ask you where the verb is. I'm going to ask you, where is the action?
Runs.
Yay, that's absolutely correct. And guess what? In this sentence, runs is also the verb. So here you have an example of the verb actually being the action word and the action word being the verb. But let's look at our next sentence. John has been a runner for 5 years. Where is the action in this sentence?
I don't see any action. A runner is a noun, but that's what he's doing. So I'm a little confused.
There is no action. There is no action at all in this sentence, but we do have a verb. And the verb is has been. Okay, we'll talk about that some more on the next slide. Now let's look at our third sentence. Running can be good exercise. Where's the action word here?
Running.
Running is indeed an action word. Yay. Do we have any other word that could possibly be considered an action?
No, I don't think so.
What about exercise?
Yeah, maybe
I exercise every morning. That is something I do. So in some sentences, that can also be an action. But neither one of these is the verb. So in this sentence, we've got two actions, but neither of them are the verb. The verb is can be. All right, so here are our verbs: runs, has been, and can be. That's not very helpful, is it? Because here we've got one sentence where the word is a verb and an action. We have another sentence where there is no action. The verb is has been. And we have a third sentence where we've got all kinds of action, but none of the action actually is the verb. Now, this verb has been and this verb can be. These verbs are not action. They're called state of being verbs or linking verbs, because John has been a runner for 5 years. Even when he's sleeping, he's a runner. Right? So it's not what he's doing, it's what he's being. And maybe that's why we don't call ourselves human doings. Right? Because what's more important than what we're doing sometimes is actually what we are being. Are we being kind? Are we being grouchy? Are we being tired? Right? And so that state of our being informs many times actually what we do. Right? So we're going to talk more about state of being linking verbs. We're going to do a couple of workshops on verbs and verb tense, and we'll do a deeper dive into these kinds of verbs then. But right now, I'd like you to get that idea of verbs as actions, set that aside and say sometimes verbs are action words, but not always. Right? So if you can just make that a sometimes thing, and then I'm going to help you come up with what I think is a much better understanding of what verbs are, because there is one thing that you can look for and always know that that word or that group of words actually is a verb. And what that one thing is, verbs tell time. They are your timekeepers. They're like the watch on your arm, or the phone that tells you what time it is, or the clock on your wall, or the ancient sundial that people used to use hundreds and hundreds of years ago to help them tell time. And how do all of those devices tell time? The same way verbs do. They tell time by changing their form. If I have a clock right up here, and if that clock says 9 o'clock all day long, I know I need to change the batteries because that clock's not telling time anymore. I know my clock is telling time if that hand is constantly changing. Just like on my phone, if it stays at 9 o'clock all day long, it's not telling time. On a cloudy day, that ancient sundial has no shadow. And it's the shadow moving on the sundial as the sun moves across the sky that allowed the ancients to tell time. And the same is true with verbs. So a simple thing to understand is, if you can change the form of the word in your sentence, you have a verb form, it looks like a verb, right? If you can change the form of that verb to change the time in your sentence, it is a verb. If you can't change the time, it's a verbal. So let's look at John runs every morning for an hour. Let's see how that works. John ran in the rain. Notice I changed the word runs to another verb form, ran, and the time in my sentence changed. Do you see that, Joey? I went from when, now, to
Past tense.
And now will run. Now I have two verbs working together, two words working together to make one complete verb. And where's my time now?
Future.
Yep. Is running. He's in the process of running right at the present moment. He has been running for an hour. And here's another thing that verbs can do. Not only can they tell a specific time, they can tell a period of time. And has been running tells us that something started in the past and has continued right up until the present moment. So for the past hour, this has been happening. John has been running. John has run in 5 marathons. John is a runner. Look at our state of being verb, right? He is a runner. That is his state of being. That's who he is right now. But guess what? I changed the is to was, and now I'm talking about his state of being in the past. It's making sense, Joey?
Yes.
Will be a runner someday. Now look how I've changed my verb form. And my time in my sentence has changed. Has been a runner for 5 years. Again, that is something that started 5 years ago in the past. And my verb tells me the entire amount of time that John has been a runner. Running is good exercise. Running was good exercise until I tore a tendon. Running will be good exercise again once I heal. And notice that most of these verbs are more than one word. That's what we call a complete verb.
So is running a noun or a subject
Where?
in the bottom, like running will be good or running?
Yes, in this last sentence, yes, running is the subject. It is the thing that will be good. It is the thing that was good. It is the thing that can be in an alternate reality, right? And it is the thing that is now good exercise. So the word running that you saw, you see it as an action. It actually is a verbal. And we're going to get into that very shortly. It is a verb form. But notice up here, is running. Notice in this sentence, running is part of the verb because it has the helping verb is or has been to tell time for it. But when it's by itself, it has no means of telling time. Therefore, it is not a verb. It's automatically a verbal. Very good question, Joe. So we saw all of those different verbs, and we saw that many of them had more than one word. Every single verb in the English language has 4 forms: the simple present, the simple past, the present participle, and the past participle. And these words can either be a verb or a verbal, depending upon whether or not they tell time. Simple present, walk. Simple past, walked. The present participle is walking. The past participle is walked. Now, I want you to look at these simple past. We tend to think of past tense verbs as having D or ED, and a lot of them do. But then we've got ran, saw, broke, and ate. And for these irregular verbs, the whole word changes. There's no simple pattern for an irregular verb. And so it's very important, especially if English is not your first language, it is very important that you memorize these irregular verb forms. But fortunately, we have our modern day Oracle, also known as the internet. And all you have to do is type in irregular verbs in English, and you will find a chart that has all of the irregular verbs, and you can download that, save it to your computer. And as you're writing, you can begin to work with and make sure you're using the correct form of the word. All right. Present participle is easy. You just take your simple present and add ing. It doesn't matter whether it's a regular verb or irregular verb. Present participles are all the same. They're your ing forms. And just like we saw running is good exercise, these present participles can never be a verb by themselves. They have to have a helping verb to tell time. Now let's take a minute and look at our past participle. Notice that sometimes with our regular verbs like walk, notice the past participle is exactly the same as the simple past. But then when you come to break and broke, notice your past participle is an entirely different word, broken, just like eat, ate, and eaten. So again, you've got to memorize these past participle forms, these irregular verbs, to make sure that you're using the correct form of the verb. All right. So as I said, with the present and the past participle, they can't be verbs by themselves. They have to have a helping verb. Now we're going to do a little practice, okay? We're going to look at the difference between a verb and a verbal with these present participles. And when the present participle is not a verb, it's going to be functioning in your sentence as either an adjective or a noun. Adjectives describe nouns, and nouns are people, places, and things. Remember, Joey, when you asked if running was the subject in that sentence? That was the present participle acting like a noun. So let's look at the word crying. That crying baby must be hungry. The word crying is not a verb. It doesn't tell time. The time is must be. So what is crying doing in this sentence? Is it an adjective or is it a noun? What do you think, Joey?
Well, it describes the baby, so it has to be an adjective.
Yes, ma'am. Now let's look at crying as part of a verb. The baby was crying for an hour. Notice now the word was sets the time for the present participle crying. And I can change this helping. The baby is crying. The baby will be crying for an hour at 10 o'clock. The baby has been crying for an hour. So I can take this present participle as my main verb, and I can pick different helping verbs to tell the time for it. And that's what makes the verb tenses. And again, we're going to have 2 separate workshops that look at the various verb tenses, how they're put together, and when is the best place to use them in your sentences. Let's look at seeing. My sister finally got a seeing eye dog. Now, what do you think seeing is doing in this sentence?
It's describing either eye or dog. So
Kind of eye dog. Yeah, it's an adjective, right? Seeing and eye are both working as adjectives to describe the dog. They're kind of, it doesn't make sense to have a seeing dog, right? No, that doesn't really work. And an eye dog doesn't work. But when you put the two, and eye, you think of eye as a noun, right?
yeah.
But in this sentence, it's actually working as part of an adjective. So, you can know the parts of speech, but what's really important after you learn the parts of speech is to learn, but what is it doing in this sentence? Because in one sentence, it might be part of a verb. In another sentence, it might be an adjective. In another sentence, it might be a noun. In one sentence, I have my eye hurts. That's a noun, right? But here, I is working as an adjective. And now we've got seeing as part of the verb. My sister is seeing a therapist. My sister was seeing a therapist. Let's move to an alternate reality, one that's not real time. My sister should be seeing a therapist, right? She's not. By golly, she should be. Yeah? Okay. While running in the marathon, John pulled a muscle. And here's your running. Now, this is interesting because in this sentence, what is running doing? Is it a noun or is it an adjective?
Well, it's part of the phrase while running.
Yep. And what is this while running describing?
The when John pulled a muscle. So John
actually modifying John, because picture John
while running
in the marathon. Now, while filming the marathon, right? Now, John, your picture of John has changed, hasn't it? Because now he's not running, he's filming. So that ing word right there is part of what we call an adjective phrase. And that's a whole other workshop. John was running in a marathon when he pulled a muscle. Now, both of these sentences basically create the same kind of picture, don't they? I've taken my present participle adjective phrase and turned it into a clause by turning running into a verb, was running, and giving that verb the subject, John. John was running in a marathon when he pulled a muscle. And these are different kinds of sentences. And come back for our workshops on fragments and clauses, because that's when we'll look at these different types of putting subjects and verbs together in different clauses. But right now, we're looking at verbs versus verbals. Eating too much fast food is not healthy. So what is eating doing here? Adjective or noun? Is it describing a thing or is it a thing?
I think it is a thing.
It is a thing. It is a thing that is not healthy. Now it's part of a verb. My father has been eating too much fast food his entire life. And I will remind you that you can go back and look at this PowerPoint again and again, Joy. It's a lot of information. And I do encourage you to watch it several times. Every time you watch it, you'll see a little something different. You'll gain a little bit more mastery. And that goes for those of you all that are watching it for the first time. Past participles are trickier because remember, as we said, sometimes they look just like the simple past. Let's look at this. Regularly walked dogs are better behaved. What is it doing here? Is it a verb or is it a verbal?
Well, are has to be the verb, so I guess it's a verbal, but it doesn't seem to be a noun.
Nope, it's describing dogs.
Okay.
What if I were to say regularly fed dogs? See, I'm describing the dog. Sarah has walked her dog every morning this week. Now it's part of a verb. I put the helping verb has in front of it, and it becomes a full verb with the subject, Sarah. The defeated team left the field. What is the word defeated doing?
That describes team, so that's probably
I know. And that always makes me so sad when I know somebody has to be the loser, but I think that's why sports are sometimes hard for me, because I get sad when I see those poor people, or they've worked so hard. Anyways, but here the team has been defeated 3 times this season. Now look, my verb here has 3 words. Come back for verb tense to learn how these pieces get put together and what the difference is in the way they tell time. I stepped on a fragment of broken glass. There's our word broken. What's it doing in this sentence, Joey?
describing glass.
Absolutely. I have broken 3 glasses this week. The half-eaten pizza sat out all night. Half-eaten.
So it's an adjective, but it's a little confusing because it's part of another phrase.
Yep. And that's why we got the hyphen, half-eaten. Yeah, because the eaten pizza couldn't sit out, right?
No.
Nope. John has eaten all of the pizza. And now eaten is part of a verb, right? Okay. So a final and much easier to recognize verbal is the infinitive. Quick review: present participle verbals, past participle verbals. Now let's look at our infinitives. What makes infinitive so easy, this verbal always comes after the word to. Now the word to can also be a preposition. When it's a preposition, it's going to have a noun or a pronoun in it. When it's a verbal, an infinitive, it's going to have the simple present tense, to walk. So what I could have done in this sentence, and maybe what I should have done, was I love to walk to the park every morning. And now I've got to walk as my infinitive and to the park as my prepositional phrase. So the word to plus a verb form makes a verbal. The word to without a verb form makes a prepositional phrase. All right. But the thing to remember is the minute you put that verb after the word to, it cannot tell time. I walk my dog every morning. I walked my dog every morning. I will walk my dog every morning. I should walk my dog every morning. I can change the time in this sentence. The minute I put that word after to, I love to walked my dog. I love to will walk my, see, I love to should walk my, see, the minute I put it after to, it loses all ability to tell time. It cannot be a verb. It's automatically a verbal. And these infinitives can either function as nouns or adjectives, and every now and then as adverbs, but not too often. All right. Let's talk about what this is, to walk, though, before we get on to the next one. I could say, I love chocolate. Right? And chocolate becomes the thing I love. I love teaching. Teaching is the present participle, the thing that I love to do. Here, I love to walk. So to walk is the thing I love to do. John hates to run. His brothers run every morning. See how this exact same word, put it after to, it can't tell time. I have been trying, there's a long verb, to eat more healthy food. I have been eating more healthy food. Eat, not a verb. Change it to eating, put some helping verbs. I just replaced it trying, my present participle, with eating, that present participle, right? And here I'm trying to do something. Here I actually have been accomplishing it. So verbs are fun because they're complicated, right? And that causes frustration, I think, for students. When they think of verbs as action words, I think that sometimes they're like, well, you know, if it's an action word, they should be easy, right? It's easy to spot actions. Joey, you had no trouble finding the actions, right? And so you're thinking, well, if verbs are actions and actions are easy, why do I keep having so much trouble with verbs? But when you start thinking of verbs as timekeepers, then that can explain the complications, because time is a very difficult concept for all of us. We all struggle with time. And time is constantly changing. In one scenario, 5 minutes might seem like an eternity, right? 5 minutes waiting to get the news from the doctor, right, about your loved one. That can seem like a long time. 5 minutes to say goodbye to your loved one at the airport, it's gone just like that. Yeah, right? So time is a very complicated in our lives. It's difficult to manage. It's difficult to understand. There many times doesn't seem to be much consistency. It's like, wait a minute, I thought I had 30 minutes. Where did the time go? How many times have you said that? Where did the time, where did the morning, all my time, where'd my time go? It's gone, right? And other times, gosh, time is just dragging. Why? Because I'm waiting for something. So time is complicated and complex. So the words that we use to share time with our readers, by their very nature, have to be equally complex and complicated. And so if that helps you say, okay, yeah, of course I'm struggling because it's hard. But here's the good news, students, you can do hard things. All right, when you put your mind to it and you put in the effort and the time, you can master these concepts. All right, so let's sum up what we've covered. First, verbs tell time. That is their number one job, and they tell time by changing their form, i.e. tense. Second, verbals are verb forms that do not tell time. There are 3 types of verbals: your present participles, your past participles, and your infinitives. These verbals can act like adjectives or nouns in the sentence, but they can never be verbs in that sentence because they cannot change form to tell time. It is important to practice paying attention to the difference between verbs and verbals in the sentences you read. So as you're reading, just take a little time to say, oh, is that a verbal? Is that a verb? And just start to condition yourself to notice the difference in your reading, and then it'll be easier to notice in your writing. Okay, let's practice. So we're going to look at these 3 sentences, we're one at a time, and we're going to try to find the verbs and the verbals. Okay, so I just want to take a moment to say that the workshop part of this is over. And so if you need to go get something to drink or take a break or stretch, now we're going to move into the practice part of the workshop. Okay, so this is an entirely different part of it. All right, walking to the park every morning helps John to relax. All right, Joey, let's look for the verbals first of all. There are 2 of them.
Walking.
Yep.
And to relax.
Bingo. And where's the verb? There's only one.
Helps.
Yay. Good job. Next one. Susan, while driving to Orlando, saw a rainbow stretching across the sky. Again, 1 verb, 2 verbals.
Stretching, verbal.
Yes.
Verb, saw.
Yep.
Driving. Right?
Excellent. Good job. Look at the proficiency. Oh, I accidentally hit the button there. Sorry, my bad. All right. So here we see, oh, look at lying broken. 2 verbals, both functioning as adjectives. What are they describing, Joey? Can you tell?
The seashell.
Yep, because the seashell is lying in the sand. The seashell is broken in the sand. Lying broken in the sand. Sparkled like a diamond. All right. I wish that I could afford to put a swimming pool in my backyard. Okay, here we've got 1, 2 verbs, and it looks like 2 verbals.
Okay, so verbal, to put.
Yep.
And I think swimming
Yep.
describes pool. Wish is the verb.
Wish. And what's the other verb? There's one more verb. It's got two words in it.
Could afford.
Perfect. Good job. Good job. Okay. This one now, this sentence is a little complicated. Trying to win back the title, the basketball coach decided to make his players run 5 laps a day. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 verbals and only one verb. I know. And one of the verbals is hidden. It's got an invisible to in it. I know. And
Okay,
the only way to
so-
know that verbal is you can't change time. And if it can't change time, it's a verbal.
Okay, so I know that trying, because it doesn't help.
That's a verbal. That's one verbal.
And to win.
That's another verbal.
To make.
That's another verbal. And now you have one more verbal and one verb.
Well, the verb I think is decided.
Decided, because it tells time. Will decide. The coach will decide. The coach has decided. The coach decides. Right? There's your verb. And now you have a verbal and there's no clue to it. It looks just like a verb, but you can't change the form to tell time.
I don't see one. I don't see anything that maybe no lapse is a noun.
What about run?
Run's a verb.
Well, let's see if we can tell time with it. Trying to win back the title, the basketball coach decided to make his players ran 5 laps a day.
No.
Decided to make his players will run 5 laps a day. So this looks just like a verb and it doesn't have a to in front of it. It's not past tense. It's not a present participle, but it cannot change its form to tell time in this sentence. It's automatically a verbal. And you will find these occasionally in your sentence. And the place you're going to find them is when you already have an infinitive to make. And then you follow up with what should be another infinitive to run. But you're not going to put that additional to in there because it sounds awkward. Decided to make his players to run. But actually it is an infinitive without the to. And that's very, very tricky. But all you have to remember is if you can't change tense, it's not a verb. That's all you have to remember. Okay. I know. And that's why you're going to want to go back and watch this PowerPoint at least one more time and practice writing some of your own sentences that use these formulas. After running 5 miles a day for over a year, John made a decision to switch his exercise routine to swimming laps. We've got 1, 2, 3. 3 verbals and 1 verb.
Okay, so running, verbal.
Mm-hmm.
To switch.
Verbal.
And well, I can't tell if it's to swimming or swimming.
It's really good. That's
Verbal.
really good. But it's still a verbal. Swimming is a verbal, right?
Okay.
We'll talk about that in just a minute. And where's your verb?
Made.
Beautiful. So you're right. And it's like, well, there's a present participle, there's an ing word after to. Well, remember when we said present participles could also be nouns? That they can be things. And when we talked about the preposition to, that it would be followed by a noun. Well, that's what we've got here. Swimming is the thing he changed his routine to. And that's just, that you don't really need to know that. I just want you to see these combinations. All you really need to know is that if you've got a verb form coming after to, it's not going to be a verb. And so this particular to is actually a preposition and it's got the present participle as a noun coming after it. Right? So maybe he decided to switch his exercise routine to weights. Right? Or change his exercise routine to 5 times a day. right? So you can turn it into, you can change it into another, into a more generic type of noun. But the bottom line is, for the purposes of mastering the skills in this workshop, does it tell time? And if it doesn't, it's a verbal. Okay. So 2 more sentences here. Laughing Cow cheese is one of the best cheeses that I have ever eaten, comma, but it is too expensive for me to buy on a regular basis. Lots of verbals in here and some verbs. We've got 1 verbal, we've got 2 verbals, we've got 2 verbals, and we've got at least 2 verbs, 3 verbs. So here we've got 3 verbs and 2 verbals.
So laughing is
Verbal, yep.
To buy.
To buy is your second verbal. And now you've got 3 verbs.
3 verbs. It is.
Is this one of your verbs?
Have ever eaten.
Have ever eaten. And one more little bitty tiny
Oh,
verb.
is.
There you go. Got is in there twice. And notice that I did not turn the ever purple because ever is actually an adverb. Doesn't really matter, right? Doesn't really matter. If you want to consider it part of the verb, I got no issue with that. It's not going to affect the quality of your writing one bit. Okay. All right. So now, given enough information and good examples, students can really begin to understand grammatical concepts if they are willing to practice. And I'm not even going to tell you for this last one how many verbs and verbals there are. Let's see what you can find.
Okay, so to understand, verbal.
Yep.
To practice, verbal.
Verbal. Got 1 more. It's a past participle, past verb form.
Given.
There you go. Excellent. Yes. I give, I gave, I have given, but there's no helping verb to tell time. So here it's a verbal. Good. One of those irregular verb forms. Now, where's my verb?
Begin.
And there's 1 more. Yep. There's one. And there's 1 more.
Are willing.
Beautiful. Can begin and are willing. Good job, Joey. You've done a fantastic job with this. All right, so let's do a little review here just to sum up what we've learned today. What's the big difference between the verbs and the verbals? What is that difference? Verb tense. And what does that mean? It means verbs tell time in the sentence and verbals do not. And we're going to say it 1 more time just because it's so super important and it sums up everything we've learned here. Verbals may look like verbs, but they do not tell time because they can't change tense in the sentence. Verbs tell time and can be changed to change time in the sentences. And that you can sum this entire workshop in. Now, our next workshop, we're going to look at the different verb tenses and how they should be used in sentences. Meanwhile, pay close attention to verb forms in the sentences you read and the sentences you write, asking yourself this question: are they verbs or are they verbals? And thank you so much, Joey. And thank you to all the students who will be watching this and commenting on it and learning to tell the difference between verbs and verbals.